So I'm going to allow these lovely people, if they don't mind, to introduce themselves while I go do that. Please talk amongst yourselves. It is wonderful to see all of them, and I will be right back in just a minute. Go ahead, introduce, say hi, etc.
Over to you, Pi.
Okay, who should
PiranJade.
I introduce?
Well, you introduce yourself.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll
Go
start to
first.
do it different this time. Okay, hi, I'm Piran. And I'm going to play a kenku Paladin. Waves crashing against rocks is her name, or this sound. There we go. Yes, and she has now reached level 2, which brought out completely new sides of her that she will have to discover very soon. Also, the soundboard is all prepared because for those of you who are for some reason new here, welcome. Kenkus don't speak with their own voice. They just repeat noises, sounds, voices they have heard. And I have prepared, I think by now, about like 90 of those on the soundboard. Some of them are more useful than others, but they are there and I will use them. So, yay, hello. Saber, your turn.
Who, me?
Yes, you.
Hey everybody, I'm Darksaber2K and I'll be reprising the role of Morthwyl Gogoniant, dwarven artificer at your service, who is a stubbed toe away from dying, I think, as most of us are at this point now, but has also hit level 2, and this is where the fun for the artificer starts to kick in. I think we'll be talking about our abilities a bit shortly, but let's just say it starts to get a lot more interesting at this point. And over to who's next? Mike.
Oh, myself. Oh, wonderful. Well, as Arv normally asks, the world is treating me quite well at the moment. I'm in a bit of a content crisis right now, as I've said on social media. I don't really know where I want to pour my efforts in regards to my content creation. So, chat, if you've ever watched any of my content, please let me know what you have enjoyed, and I'm going to kind of mix that into what I have enjoyed creating as well. Okay,
that doesn't help you.
That's the least helpful and the most complimentary.
Everything you do is great. Thanks.
Everything is awesome. Yes, so also tonight I will be stepping back into the split and blood-soaked shoes of Silvo Janus Betulus, the half-elven sorcerer with an aberrant mind background, who has not exactly come to terms with his magical background as of yet, and kind of lost his temper in our last session in regards to being used as a bit of a pawn for certain characters and individuals of Saltmarsh. So I'm interested to know where this goes for him. But there will be many things revealed as some of the party members have many questions for my character. And with that, I'm going to hand over to the wonderful and enigmatic Inanda.
Hello, I'm Inanda, and I will be playing Brine the Bloodthirsty, who is a water genasi fighter. She tries to come off with some bravado, but quite frankly, her performance so far has not lived up to her reputation, of which she does have a fairly substantial reputation, being a pirate. However, we have, as we said, just leveled up to level 2, and she's rolling up her sleeves, metaphorically, ready to get stuck in and crick her neck and prove herself.
That's good stuff. And thank you, everybody, for doing that. Everything is fine. He's calling for my wife, who's not back yet. So we had a discussion about what it means to not be able to have the thing you want right now. So anyway, so it is wonderful to have this lovely crew of people with us. And yes, we had a lot of things that happened in our last session. But before we do any of that session stuff, what we need to do here is we need to talk about what new cool stuff that they can do. And I don't think we didn't roll hit points yet, did we? So so we need to do that as well. So let's start with, and if you mentioned this already, then I'm sorry, because I was dealing with my son. But Piran, do you want to talk about what cool new things we've got from waves crashing against rocks at level 2, etc.?
I touched upon this, that there are some changes, but yeah. So Waves is now a level 2 paladin, which means she gets a fighting style, which in her case is a dueling.
Yes.
Because that's how she is.
Yes.
And She also subtly is able to do a divine smite, which I'm pretty sure the first time it happens will be very surprising for her. And maybe she was watching Silvo a bit too closely, I don't know. But now she can also cast a little bit of magic. So we'll see how that works out.
It's good stuff. I like the idea too that Divine Smite, because you're doing things like dueling sword type of stuff. I have this image of you being like, "Have at you!" Like, you do like some Errol Flynn thing where you like stab forward with the rapier, but then it's Divine Strike, and there's like because literally the biggest damage dealer to this point has been Waves. Like Waves has been putting in some serious work on the damage front. So
with a rapier.
Oh, yes.
With a rapier,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh,
And
yes.
I mean, what's also really interesting is that all Paladin spells, as far as I've seen, like all of them, have a vocal component, which means usually you like speak out a spell, like you say a spell.
Mm-hmm.
But very obviously, Waze might never have heard those spells, and she can't really invent her own spell words saying so. We'll see what happens the next time she says abracadabra. We'll see how all of this works out.
We'll see how it all works. So
Would you
with
like
that
me
said,
to roll for
yes,
hit
I was just about
points?
to ask you. Yes, please.
Yeah, I thought. So for me, it's a D10 hit dice plus my constitution then.
All
Right?
right. That is correct. Yes. Here we go.
Blop, blop. The roll, what? Let me, I have the roll hidden for me. That's not good.
Whoa! Ladies and gentlemen, the full 10 plus 3, 13 points, doubling the amount from before. Wow. All right. So 26. Now, what I will say for this, by the way, Piran, is that we're also going to double your current hit points just for the before you rest. So
Okay.
you're at 16 out of 26 is what this means.
Yes. And
Hell
I also
yes.
get a second hit
That's right.
dice. So for spending hit dice for
Right.
resting, I now have 2 of them.
I thought for a minute you meant that you were going to roll again. I'm like, no, that's not how that
no,
works.
no.
I was like, no, but I get you. Yes, you have a second hit die. Yeah, so that's awesome. So 26 hit points. Good stuff. All right, so now we know a little bit about Waves. See, Waves has got it all covered. It's all fine. Now we jump down to Morthwyl. So what cool artificer, I know you talked a little bit about this in our last session, Saber, but tell us what cool new stuff Morthwyl can do. What can he artifice now?
Well, off the bat, he immediately gains, he can prepare another spell, although he still only has 2 spell slots, but he
Right.
can have an extra option in if he needs be, which is always handy. But the artificer really starts to come into its own here from what I've seen, because this is where it's the true sort of beauty and versatility of this class really starts to shine.
Yep.
Because this is where artificers gain infusions.
Mhm.
So an artificer gains 4 infusions at level 2 from a selection of many. There's level 2 ones, there's level 6 ones, I think level 14 ones. You can choose 4. You can have 2 active at any time. And these let you do a variety of different things. So to pick from ones I've got, I can enhance defense. So any piece of armor I can carve a magical rune into, essentially, and give it a nice +1 to AC. Or I can enchant an arcane focus, which would give someone wielding an enchanted rod, staff, or scepter, I think it was, with a +1 to spell attack rolls, and ignore half cover when making spell attacks.
Wow.
Which pretty nifty.
This is all
I've
good
also
stuff.
got things like enhanced weapon. These are all the mundane ones, but they're the most immediately useful right now. I can swap one of these out every level as well to keep the versatility going. I can turn a weapon magic and give it +1 to attack and damage rolls. But the real fun for this class comes with my last one, which is I took one of the replicate magic item slots. So I could take 4 of these. You have to take 1 per item, and you have to specialize in that item. You can make things like alchemy jugs, which can produce hang on, let me pull up the Discord. The list of things this thing can make is pretty funny. Of course, Piran immediately asked, can it make antidote? No, it can't make antidote. But what it can make is any of the following: daily, acid, basic poison, beer, honey, mayonnaise, oil, vinegar, fresh water, salt water, and wine, for example.
You could combine them. Mayonnaise, poison, honey. No, I'm just kidding.
I could open a salad bar.
You could. You could
That's
have a deli
that's
bar,
really
yeah.
what this is. Is like you open up your own artificer salad bar. I just
Yeah. So that was
Craft
one of the
beer deli bar.
options. The other option, which was of particular interest to Silvo, is I could replicate a bag of holding, the legend itself. But not right now. That's a possibility for the future. I may swap out for that at some point. But what I've gone for my magic item is the rope of climbing,
yeah.
which is a particularly nice piece of rope. I can turn any rope into a rope of climbing, which is a 60-foot length of rope that can hold up to 3,000 pounds. I can hold one end and command it to move itself to a destination and tie itself securely. It can then tie itself in knots to give advantages to climbing checks. I believe you can even use it to constrict enemies if you try, but that's not really why I went for it. I just thought with the climbing shenanigans last time, a rope that can tie itself 50 feet in the air sounds quite useful.
In before, everything we do from now on is 2-dimensional, and literally you're just like another 1-story building. You're like, God damn it! Like,
but the other options, things I passed over for now, but will probably crop up later. Things like homunculus, where I can actually craft my own familiar, but I need a gem worth 100 gold or a dragon shard to do that. So that's going to take some acquisition to pull that one off. But that becomes a fully formed familiar that can scout and cast spells. I can use it as a channel for touch spells, so I can send it like 120 feet away and cast a touch spell on someone. That's definitely got its uses, things like that. So lots of other things and loads more. Too much to go into here. Like I've spent ages pouring through this just to pick these four.
Yeah, you're
and
right.
The list of magic items you can pick is huge. It's basically, if it's listed as a magic item, you can replicate it. I can only pick common ones at the moment, but it goes all the way up to like rare stuff as well.
Yep.
And there's lots and lots of options.
Narratively, it's going to be fun too, because you did a good job with that, I think, sort of explaining how the healing stuff that you were doing was not just like I'm giving you a potion or I'm, doing a divine cleric spell or whatever, but you were, it's this thing that felt very artificer-like in terms of like a crystal that you used with the point, like, the whole bit. So, it's going to be fun to see how that goes. So cool. I am excited for that. I'm also excited to see your hit points.
Yes,
so right now,
indeed.
Morthwyl has had 11 as a total. So let us see what it's going to be.
So I have 1d8 plus my constitution, which is 2, but also because I am a dwarf and I have dwarven toughness, I get a bonus 1 at every level up.
1d8 plus 3 then.
Plus 3.
All right. All right. I mean, it's 5, so that means 16. I mean, it's no waves crashing against rocks,
No,
but
it's
like okay, so we're talking about so I'm gonna guesstimate that for your current hit points. So that means you're up to 16 as a max. So I'm gonna say that you're at 6 out of 16. Okay. Saber, so you can just to kind of basically replicate it. You do also get an additional hit die to use in healing and stuff like that. So not bad. Not bad. And I think you had the second. You had the third most behind Brine, so we'll see how things go with Brine. But still, good stuff, Morthwyl. Yeah, as the artificer increases in power, I agree with you. I love the flexibility of it. It's a very imaginative class. I agree. All right, cool. That brings us up to Silvo next. And of course, Mike and I have been deep in discussions behind the scenes about all the things with stuff that are going on and about how, when Silvo kills off his party members. I mean, that's not at all what we talked about. I don't know what.
Pretty much.
That's not, no.
But
no.
The grand sacrifice finally happens.
Yes, exactly. When the sacrifice occurs. But no. So it is going to be interesting to see here because Silvo, of course, is our straight magic using class. What kind of magic user, more of that will be determined as time goes on, so to speak. But yeah, so I'm curious about what cool stuff you get at level 2, Mike, with Silvo.
Well, so if I just go back quickly to my notes, I've decided to stick with the flat kind of sorcerer level 2 stuff I get is sorcery points. I get a new spell. Would you like me to explain what the spell is?
Please.
Excellent. I've chosen False Life, which essentially allows me to boost my own life using a facsimile of false life. which I think is great. Just the wording of that in the player's handbook is just fantastic. Using a facsimile of health, you boost your own.
Facsimile, I think, is what you're saying, right?
Facsimile. Oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. I'm like, wait, what? Yeah, that's what it is. Yes. So right.
Yes.
As in false light. Yeah.
Also, he has learned Font of Magic, so I now have sorcery points, which I can swap in addition to my normal spell slots. I can now use sorcery points to gain an additional spell slots, or at later levels, I can use to enhance spells in regards to meta magic. So more on that in the coming levels. But as Silvo doesn't really understand any of this, as normal sorcerers may grow into this magic, and they may understand, oh, this is what my teacher, or this is what the handbook told me would happen at this age or level of experience. He just kind of feels like he's just got a bit of indigestion right now. It's a little bit like when you drink too much water all at once, and you just feel like I am just a vessel for the amount of water I have just consumed. Like it's kind of like that. He's like, I'm just kind of uncomfortable and a bit bloated. That's what the sorcery points. I think that's what the sorcery points kind of feel like. I've also swapped out one of my cantrips. So to stick with the kind of thematic or the theme of Silvo's magic being a little bit unpredictable sometimes, I've swapped out Shape Water for Chill Touch, which allows me to basically inflict necromantic or necrotic damage at range rather than Shape Water. So it'll be interesting to know when Silvo tries to do Shape Water alongside or separate to Brine, who can also do the same thing, and he can't do it, what his actual reaction is going to be to that. So that's pretty much it for Silvo.
Good stuff. And I am excited to see how all of that kind of plays out as we move forward. So then I'm going to ask you as well to make your hit point roll in the same ways that we have previously
so I get the 1d6 plus my constitution, which is 2, so bear with me. And it is going to be...
Oh, okay. Well, right in the middle.
5.
So 5. So we're looking at 13. No, not 133. Or if that's not...
I mean, I'll take 133.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you would. I have no doubt. Okay, and then we're just going to do... so we're going to have you at 11 out of 13 for your current. Okay, good stuff so far. As we can see, the dizzying power that already the party is amassing. And that leads us last but certainly not least to Inanda with Brine. So what awesome stuff does a water genasi fighter, pirate specifically, what exactly can we expect from Brine at level 2?
Oh, well, I leveled up via character mancer on roll 20, so it just leveled me up as a fighter. So I don't have too many fancy schmancy things going on at level 2, but I do have action surge, so I can push myself beyond my normal limits for a moment, and and I can have an additional action per short or long rest. However, the character mancer did automatically roll my hit points, but I can re-roll them live if you would prefer. It rolled a 6 when and I was with my friend at the time who jumped on a voice call with me when I rolled it, but I can roll it live if you would prefer me to do it then.
So you would, because normally you'd have a 1d10
1d10 plus my con modifier, which is 3.
I mean, you know what I'll say? This is what I'll say. I will give you the choice. If you want to keep the one that you rolled with your friend, that's fine. But if you want to double your money and go for even more, then you can feel free to do that.
Ooh.
I'm not actually meaning to double your hit points, but you could roll if you wanted to see if you got a higher number.
I could roll higher than 6. I mean, I didn't roll it last time. Roll 20 did. Oh, okay, we'll do it live because otherwise I didn't realize everyone else was doing it live.
Okay. Okay, and it's plus what for you? You've got your con modifier.
Plus 3.
Okay.
My con is 16, so I've got a plus 3. Oh no! How if I actually do it properly?
You've rolled an RD10.
I've done rolled an RD10. Yeah, perfect.
You've rolled a chat command.
Pro D&D. I'm sorry.
Hey, see? This is
I did
why you
not-
do that. This is why you do that.
Doubled your hit points.
12 points. So there were no disasters here, let it be said. Like nobody rolled terribly. Like that's the big news here. So nice. Look at that. 12 hit points, which means that Brine is up to 25. So we're going
to change this on my character sheet now.
Yeah, 25, and then that's going to go up to, I got to figure that out. Okay, so then you're going to be at 12 of 25, Brine, when you get a chance to see that. So your current will be at 12 as well. Now, of course, you're not at the beefy level of Waves, who just, like now is become a double-sized eagle, but like you're close to them. I should point out, actually, Triffid was talking about this in chat, and I do want to just quickly highlight the fact that hit points, as we know, is really an abstract concept. Sometimes people think of this as being like, well, it's the amount of hits you can take. It's not really that. It's the amount of times that you can either have damage directly, or that your luck, if you will, keeps you from taking the full measure of damage that a normal person would take. And eventually that store is going to run out. So in Waves' case, because Waves is much more of a dex build, I imagine Waves being more sort of like evasive rather than being like, I am now an ostrich. Like, I imagine it's not beefy like bird. Or like the creatures that I was just had my last party fighting, which was a bunch of silent vultures. Which were huge buzzard-like, like massive eagle things. And it's more, fast and quick. And incidentally, I assume you all feel the same way about this. I said buzzard, and all of the Americans were like, yeah, buzzard. And then all the Europeans were like, buzzard, but buzzards are cute little birds. I'm like, what do you mean they're cute little birds? They're terrifying like vulture things. And it turns out that when Europeans came and settled America, what they actually saw flying in the air that they thought was a buzzard was actually a turkey vulture. And I'm here to tell you that if you see a picture of a turkey vulture, that ain't what you think of as a buzzard. So to be clear, an American and a European disagreed about the definition of a bird, and it took a Canadian to actually resolve it. So I just want to be clear that the Canadian is the one who has resolved these things. So anyway, Waves is not a buzzard. Waves is definitely a lithe kenku whose evasiveness has increased. So as we look at this, they are level 2, and we've got Brine, we've got Morthwyl at 6 out of 16. We've got Silvo at 11 out of 13. We've got Waves crashing against rocks at 16 out of 26. And we've got Brine at 12 out of 25. Good stuff, everybody. And the bad guys at 700 out of 7. No, not at all. Not even remotely the case. Good stuff, everyone. Level 2. Chat, I think you all want to see what happens next, and so do I. So let's fire up some music, and let's talk about what happens last time. Oh my God, not that loud. Let's try it this way. Yes, there we go. Okay. In our last session, as we finally no longer have the creepy haunted house music because they're out of it. In our last session, remember, when we just suddenly had a GOG alert, which didn't show up, and I don't know why. Echo Alpha with the tier 1 sub. I don't know why that didn't show up above my overlay, because it was there. Anyway, thank you very much. I heard the sound at least. Thank you, Echo, for the tier 1 56-month sub of support. We appreciate it. Welcome back to GOG. So in our last session, everybody, the 4 wonderful people that you see before you were in the process of exploring a house which was widely considered to be haunted to the north of the village of Saltmarsh. They had been sent on this adventure, on this quest, if you will, originally by Scaran Wavechaser, who is the butler of Anders Solmore. Scaran Wavechaser is someone who had seen the party sort of dealing with some political faction problems earlier in the campaign, earlier in the adventure, and had been impressed by it, and so approached the party and asked the party to investigate some of these strange goings-on and promised that there would be a monetary reward as well as other things when they arrived there. Well, the party found that indeed something was rotten in the state of Denmark, or the Marsh of Salt, I guess. And when they went there, they discovered that there were giant snakes, giant ferrets, giant weasels, sorry, and all kinds of things. And there were some mysterious sounds and moanings and screams coming from the house itself. What they ended up finding was that there was indeed a smuggling operation going on within the house, and that the operation is being spearheaded, at least locally spearheaded, by someone named Sanballat, who was a wizard of some considerable power. And when the party was able to defeat defeat some of his minions, but not Sanballat himself, Sanballat pressed them into his employ, asking them to be able to step forward and to search for an artifact for him, which they would then be able to bring back to him. They found, maybe not the artifact, but they found a lot of the people who might have been guarding it in the form of skeletons, including potentially the skeletal alchemist who used to be the owner of this home. And they ended up not being able, mostly because they were exhausted, having fought like 60 million fights in a row without being able to rest. They were not able to defeat him, but they were able to lock them temporarily in the basement, basically, while they ran up to the next floor. And after deciding what it was that they wanted to do, they were about to leave when there was a moaning and yelling and screaming sound coming from above, and someone asking for help. And the person who was asking for help was someone named Ned Shakeshaft. The party made their way through, had to deal with some uneven flooring and some dangerous footing underneath and all that, but managed to find this Ned Shakeshaft. But something seemed suspicious about him to the party, and what the party ultimately believe that they have discovered is that he was himself trying to essentially figure out a way to keep the party here, to keep the party guessing, and to put them in a situation where the party might have been killed or thrown off the scent of what was going on here. And he said that he would tell them more, or tell the people more, if they brought him back to town so that he can speak with the town council. And since the party had decided they needed to go back to the town anyway, because again, exhausted, need to go rest, the party decided that they would take Ned Shakeshaft with them. And so the party left the house, and at the very end of our last session, they were heading down the cliff, down the path from the cliff, and on the way back down to Saltmarsh, where there was a person looking cruelly, with a cruel smile on his face out of this window, and it turns out probably that it was one Sanballat, although the only one who knew for sure was Silvo, who in his head heard somebody saying to him, "Tick, tock," over and over again. And that was where we ended our last session. And so as we pick up now, I hand things back over to the party as they are heading back into the town. And I've jumped over to the map to reflect this. As they are heading back into the town, and we are heading back into the town proper. So, party, where would you like to go? You do have the town council that you need to meet up with, but you can certainly rest before going to see them. So that's entirely up to you in terms of what you want to do. Or you could just, go and bang on the doors and wake up everybody right now and be like, fear, fire, foes, awake, we've got issues or whatever. That's up to you. Party, what would you like to do?
Turning to the party as we're walking back towards town, there was somewhere, it was like it wasn't a monastery, but it was a religious building.
Yes, I have it highlighted here.
On
Temple.
the way back.
Yep.
And the guy there seemed pretty friendly. So I'm going to turn to the others and say, I think we need to just regroup before we go back to speak with the council. We heard from Ned that Gelen Primewater is right at the top of the list of culprits for putting us in this predicament, and he might well have the cure to the poison that ails us, but I don't think we're quite in the position to face him right now. Should we head there just to rest our heads for a little while?
I mean, we can. I mean, I don't know if you guys have met the priest of Saltmarsh. I've met him and the gravekeeper a couple of times, but they've probably got somewhere safe where we can rest, and probably somewhere safe for this one. And I kind of poke Ned slightly in the back with my dagger.
And Ned is, and he says, what do you want?
Nothing, shut up.
There.
So, I mean, if we're not going to go straight into town, then we need somewhere at least secure. And, I mean, the cathedral church is secure enough.
Even without this poison, we're liable to just drop dead if we stub our toe at this rate.
I'm
Yep.
agreeing with you entirely, Morthwyl. We're not looking too healthy at the moment. I've taken a bit of a beating. I think we all have, and yeah, I think we need to gather our thoughts and maybe formulate some kind of plan as to how we're going to approach this.
I'll rest anywhere. I just don't want this one to escape.
Absolutely. I mean, we can make sure that he's secure overnight.
Okay. So I just realized I should pick up your tokens. Yeah, I did. I did sort of bury the lead, which is that you're also dealing with this poison, and that you're not sure the impact of what that poison is going to be. So yes,
Just a quick.
Bury the lead or not, it is very present in our minds.
yes,
We're not
yes,
likely
no,
to forget.
I totally get it.
Just a quick time management question. How many hours have we got left? Poison countdown.
If he's accurate about about these things, the guess is that there we go. If he's accurate about these things, then the guess is that you would probably have a good still 17 hours, 16, 17 hours left on this thing.
Okay.
So yeah.
Cool. So we have time for, I mean, we've got time to rest and hold up somewhere and then go back to town.
Yeah, I think we need to come up with a solid strategy rather than just strolling into town with this guy hanging on a rope.
Yeah, Silvo just laughs. He's like, I mean, look at us. Like, we've been beaten within an inch of our lives and we can barely stand up. Like, what are we going to do right now?
I'm going to turn to and say, are you okay with this? Can we go and rest before we go and visit Galen?
I point towards the temple and nod.
Okay.
Morthwyl?
Sounds good to me.
All right, then we'll head for the church.
Okay. All right. So, you when you get back to the church, it is, and I actually am trying to remember what time of day this was. I think we were heading towards evening, weren't we? If I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
I think we were heading towards evening, so I believe that's what this was. So the sun, it's actually quite appropriate. I can see the sun setting right now because it gets dark so early now from my window. But so the sun is setting as you get to the outside of the temple. And you notice that right outside the temple, which is, of course, the Temple of Procan, right outside the temple, you can see that there is someone who is like literally walks in right before you, like doesn't see you just as you're coming in, seems to be coming from behind the temple, walks around the corner, and then walks in. And it is what looks to you like someone with orcish features, maybe a half-orc. And you could also note that there was a lot of dirt on their hands and their pants, and you can see that there's a little bit of sort of dry dirt on the ground in front of the temple that's been like on top of the regular ground that seems to have been tracked by this person from wherever they came from, and he has walked in ahead of you.
Will I recognize this person?
I think you might, actually, yes. This person you know to be, and actually Morthwyl, I guess, would know this as well. This is Crag, Krag. This is the town gravedigger. And the thing that's interesting about Crag is, well, there's two things interesting about him. First of all, Crag is not only a gravedigger, but he's also a town historian. And if you want to know anything about the history of Saltmarsh, this is the guy that you turn to. In fact, he's often very grateful to people who can help him with his research. So, like, if you have information that you can bring to him, that's the kind of thing that Crag really appreciates. Friendly fellow, and always, as I say, very intrigued in history, gets very animated and enthusiastic about it. And the graveyard is right behind the Temple of Procan, so probably not surprising.
If nobody else is going to say anything as we're approaching the temple, I'm going to say loud enough to hear, "Evening, Crag."
He walked in ahead of you. Like he's not probably close enough for you to hear for you to hear
is
him.
he not? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
because he walked in. Now you're pretty close, so you could like close the gap and like be inside. I don't know, 10 seconds later if you want.
Okay, I think that would be.
Yeah, just say to the party, it's like, aye, that's Craig the Gravekeeper. Nice feller. Get him to talk in on the subject of the town, and he'll be at it for hours.
Yeah.
That
he really
is
does.
exactly who I need to speak to, I think.
Yeah, Craig's good people. I mean, he sometimes makes some slight mistakes with who he's trying to bury, but he's good people. We have a complicated relationship.
I'm just going to go AFK for literally 2 minutes. Be back.
Okay. All right, so you make your way to the temple and then inside, I assume. Everybody's doing that? Okay. And
I definitely do, with Ned in tow as well.
okay. Yep, dragging him along. And when you all enter the temple, you are inside. Of course, you've visited this place before. And those who have not seen this before may be interested to know that the person who runs this place is a one-legged former whaler whose name is Welgar Brinehanded. And who has many sort of stories of his time at the sea, but he has always been, for some considerable amount of time, has been tending to his flock here. Procan, of course, is the god of the sea, and is the sailor of sea and sky, and so is chaotic neutral in origins, because storm. And is the kind of person that a lot of coastal towns and places like that tend to worship, because, given their proximity to what Procan would actually have dominion over. And so when you walk in, you can see there's a couple of novitiates who are kind of bustling around at the back of the temple. And Welgar is involved in very earnest conversation with the aforementioned Crag, who has his back turned to you.
Crag, father, you all right this evening?
And they turn around and Welgar, my son, it's a pleasure to have you back here. And Crag says, yeah, it's been a bit, Silvo. What exactly have you got there on the end of your leash? And he kind of points to Ned.
I kind of look over to Ned. I'm like, well, this is someone who's either going to cause us a lot of trouble or not a lot of trouble, but we need to keep him somewhere safe. So I'm wondering if maybe one of the empty crypts or one of the storerooms, just for a few hours while we rest up.
And he says, and so Welgar says, oh, well, they're not really a prison, though. Are you sure you might want to bring him down to the authorities first?
Oh, we're going to do that, don't worry. But, there may be some problems with the authorities given who they work for. So it might get a little bit naughty. Probably the less you know, the better. But you know how it goes.
I mean, come on here. Look at the state of us. And we probably look a very, very sorry state.
Oh, yeah, you definitely look a sorry state for sure. Yes. And so he says, oh, well, of course we got to tend to that. All right, well, I don't know, Craig, you mind putting him just over there in one of the pews? And so Craig brings him over and sits Ned down on the pew, and then loops the rope that you've got around and through this metal railing at the end of a pew. Now, I don't know, for those of you in chat, if you've never been to a church or inside a sanctuary, let me tell you that especially with some of these churches, these things are built to freaking last. And so when that metal stuff will not move if a hurricane hits it directly. So it's about as secure as it possibly could get. Although Ned does not seem to be in any inclination to get up and run away. He just sort of sullenly sits there, which has been more or less his attitude since coming out of the house. And Crag comes back and says, all right, that's as much as he'll need. Now, I'm still curious to know what's going on here, though, and what exactly you're doing. Why are you so messed up, as it were? And Welgar nods. I was going to ask the same thing.
I need healing.
And they sort of look at you, and Welgar says, yes, I can see. All right, come with me. And he brings you up to the front of the sanctuary. And in the front of the sanctuary, there is what basically looks like at first it looks like a kind of like a statue of this giant wave. But then as you get closer, you can see that it's actually not a statue, but is a cleverly shaped bowl. So there's a wave, and the handle is literally the edge of the wave. That's how you pick the bowl up and down. And inside the bowl, there is some actual water, not statuary, but actual water. And he takes it and brushes it on your forehead, and he whispers some words underneath his breath. And then he says, "And may the healing of the ocean take you where you need to be and keep you safe on your voyage ahead." And then he opens his eyes, and you are going to heal. Let's find out how much. You are going to heal 11 points of damage, which I think is going to bring you up to full. And also, Waves, he does this, and then he sort of narrows his eyes, and he says, "I can sense there's something else about you. Are you dealing with something?" Hold on a second.
Have you muted, or is it
You
just me?
smell a bit poisony.
Yeah. You
Find
seem a
voice
bit
thing for that.
on the brink of death. I smell death on you.
The smell of death surrounds me.
I can't hear Arv.
No, I think he's talking
No,
to someone.
he's talking to someone.
Okay, no, that's
He has,
fine.
he has himself on mute.
Yeah, he
So
has the
we're
face-
filling in. Da, 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 da. He has a face of a parent talking to a child. 100%.
Yes. 100.
Okay, sorry about that. So he looks in your eyes, Waves, and he says, "I have a sense there's something else, though. Something which is..." And he kind of, like, grumbles a little bit, and then, "There's some poison there. I can sense it." And he sort of waits to see, like... Do
I
you just
nod
nod? Yeah, like,
emphatically. Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
okay, and he says, "It's interesting stuff." And he sort of shakes his head, and then he raises his hand, and a small light, bluish light glows, and he sort of passes it over you, and then up and down, without touching you, just on around the body. And it almost looks to those of you watching as if the blue energy, like water, trickles down around the outside of her body and down the wings. And it appears that the poison has been cleared from your system. And he nods and he says, "You should be all right, but I don't like that. That's a stronger poison than you should have received. We've obviously got something to talk about. Are all of you affected by this then?"
We are indeed.
So we've
Can
been
you-
told.
Can you help?
Well, I can help at least part of you now, but I don't have the ability to do all of it at once. I can do one more, then rest, and then after a few hours I should be able to do the others. In the meantime, though, I wouldn't be leaving here without actually making sure that you're healthy. This is dangerous stuff that Waves had just now. Which one of you
Silvo
wants
kind
to be
of-
next then?
Silvo
Thank
kind of
you for
raises
your
hand-
assistance.
And a second. He just says, I might be afflicted. I don't know. I don't have your powers. Do I have this same poison in me?
And so he walks over to you and he says, "Well, come up front." And Waves, he asks you to sort of move aside from the bowl with the wave thing, with the wave handle. And he brings you over, Silvo. And so first he puts the water on your brow. He heals back 5 hit points, which is more than enough to put you up to maximum. And then he does that. And then he sort of looks at you, and his eyes kind of narrow again. And then he leans back and he says, "I don't think you've got poison, but there is something you have, and I can't tell for sure what it is. There's something else going on with you." And he kind of like looks, he almost
Yes, well-
sort of leans in a little bit looking at you.
I kind of lean back a little bit. Yes, well, as long as there's no poison, I'm sure I'm fine.
And he says, "Perhaps, but... And he kind of like shakes his head and he says, "We need to talk, Silvo." And then he looks away from you and he says, "Anyway, he's not poisoned. But Morthwyl and I suppose Brine, both of you are then, eh?"
I
We
think
believe
Brian
so.
said it a bit rougher than me if you want to check her first.
"Well, I can heal you both, but as far as the poison, I can only do one of you now, then I've got to rest for a bit."
I look at Morthwyl and I say, "You be healed now. I would very much like to speak with." Sorry, what's this guy's name? I was out of the room.
You talking about Craig, or are you talking about... Craig is the guy who's the grave
Hold
digger,
on.
who's also
Craig
the
is the
history...
grave
who's
digger,
also the
the other-
history guy.
Yeah, the other one, the one that's healing us.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The person who's healing us is...
Welgat Brine-handed.
Yeah,
that's
Welker
him,
Brynehand
Brynehand.
is the one who's healing you.
He's also looking for sailors' remains if we ever find any.
Yes, that's on the Trello board.
Side quest note.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say I'm a sailor, sir. Would you possibly help my friend? I can wait till morning.
And he sort of nods slowly and he says, "All right then." And he goes, he asks you to step forward then, Morthwyl.
Mm-hmm, she does.
And again, he brushes the water over your forehead. And he's going to heal. Let's see. That is going to be 9 points. So 15, I think you're at out of 16, I believe.
That'll do.
And then again, the sort of water kind of the blue energy, which looks almost like water, kind of drifts down, and you feel the poison cleansed from your system.
Much indebted to your father.
It's my calling, but that said, I'm troubled that you're dealing with this. And he looks at Brine. He says, "I'll need to get some rest so I can take care of you, but in the meantime, I think you ought to tell me a little bit about what it is you're dealing with here, and why exactly you ended up this way. This is not something I'd expect to see here in Saltmarsh."
We're dealing with betrayal. We took a quest in faith to try and free some supposed slaves from being traded, and we were betrayed by somebody who we are aware of, but I know you're trying to help us. However, it's made me slightly cautious of people I don't know. I know that you are obviously of strong character and great empathy, but I don't know you myself, and I would like to defer to my friends Silvo and Morthwyl to explain more about the character that we are intending to confront about this.
And he sort of nods.
I mean, I'm looking at Morthwyl and Silvo just to double check. I know this guy is healed us, but we've been betrayed before. Can we trust this guy? I know I'm
Silvo
empathizing
just-
that all in my eyes. It's very impressive.
Silvo just kind of laughs a second. He's like, "Well, Brine-handed is a good priest, and Crag, though, you know, he may have accidentally tried to bury me once. He's good people and knows his stuff about Saltmarsh. So
It might be
if
worth
there's anywhere
picking
I'd
Mr.
go-
Cragg's brains about the alchemist's house. He may know a few
Oh, yeah.
things even the people who live there don't know.
Yeah, you need to know something about Saltmarsh. Crag's the person to go to. You know, not a lot of people know it, but he knows everything about the city."
He's got that right, he says, sort of delightedly, and says, "I can always trust Silvo to get right to the heart of the matter, at least for the time that he's been here. Getting to the heart of Silvo, though, that's another thing altogether." And he gives you this kind of like, this sort of searching look with one eye half closed.
There's a very kind of theatrical lean back in a pew. He's like, someone's like, "Well, let's not go too deep into that one, shall we, Father?"
Well, no, that was Craig. Who
Oh,
did
Craig
that.
even.
Yeah,
Let's
that was Craig.
Let's not
'cause
go
he
too
was-
deep into that one, Craig. Unless we dig up some old memories between you and I, eh?
I suppose we wouldn't want to bury too much of the hatchet, eh? And he kind of grins at you, feeling extremely pleased at the extraordinarily witty, it wasn't that witty, joke that he made. And so you do all of this, and Welgar says, all right then, I'm going to leave you in the hands of Crag. I'll let him talk your ear off about history. In the meantime, I'm going to go in the back. I've got to get some rest. And as soon as I can, I'll be back out, but it'll be some hours. I've got to meditate and pray first. In the meantime, he says to you, Brine, I wouldn't stir out of this temple. Wherever you go, obviously, should be reasonably safe if what you've said is true. But this is fairly strong stuff that we're dealing with, and I want to make sure that we have taken care of it before all goes further. In the meantime, he looks at Crag and he says, you can tell Crag what it is that you've discovered, but I want to know the details when I wake later today. I want more details about how you got this poison in the first place. This is dangerous stuff.
I thank you for your gracious and kind assistance, and appreciate you helping us. And we will absolutely tell you everything tomorrow when you awaken. I'm very keen to speak with Crag myself. Crag myself. There are some parts of the history of this town that I am particularly intrigued by.
And so Crag immediately brightens up and looks excited, and Welgar sort of nods once and turns and then hobbles, stumps his way basically back to a door in the back of the chamber of the sanctuary, and then goes through it and closes the door behind him. There were still a couple of novitiates who were going around and doing a couple of them. One of them seems to be cleaning the bottom of the stained glass windows and the side of the sanctuary and stuff like that. But otherwise, it's just currently the four of you and Crag are the only other ones besides the novitiates that are in the chamber. And Crag, who very much looks like someone of his craft. He has these sort of, dirty brown breeches and this dirty brown tunic, and it's dirty all because of literally dirt, dry dirt, all kinds of dirt, which covers his various parts of his clothing. You can even see some dirt in his hair. His hair itself is white. And you can see several sort of lines and wrinkles in the face of a half-orc who's seen some things, obviously, in his time. And Crag sits down on one of the pews, so if you can imagine the pews like this, and then he turns around, to talk to all of you, basically, so he can face you. He looks, and first he looks over at Ned, and he kind of jerks his head towards Ned, and he says, so... what about that one? Should we put him in a deeper room so you can't hear anything? And Ned just kind of grunts, but Crag looks at all of you.
Can we assure that he cannot escape? We do not want this one going ahead. He is rotten to the core.
And Ned is just under his breath. Crag says, well, I can do probably the best I can to keep him locked up. They've got a storeroom back there that no one ever uses, at least not that I know of. And as long as I'm here and we're in the room, we would see anyone going over to deal with it. Just can't forget him in there, or he might have to get awfully thin before he could slip his way back out. And Ned just pays no attention, or just sort of dismisses him. And so Crag looks at all of you with an eyebrow as if to say, is that cool? Is that what we want to do?
Yep.
I'm looking around to the others and I go, yeah, absolutely. Throw him in the cupboard.
All right. So he unties him and he brings him over to this thing and opens it. And there is a seat in there, there's a chair in there, but it does look like not much more than a broom closet.
So
he says,
just bye, Ned. Bye, Ned. See you soon. Bye, Ned.
And Ned sort of chuckles and says, have a pleasant time out here. And then Crag closes the door on him and locks it from the outside, and turns around and walks back. And he says, "All right, I'll bite. Why exactly are you carrying around this one? Why is he so dangerous, as you say?" And he looks at you, Brine. "You said he was a risk? A risk of doing what?"
He is of great risk. There is a conspiracy in this town. I'm new here. We, in good faith, took a quest to go and try and free some slaves. Myself and my companions here went to the artifice house on the hill. We did discover some nefarious pirate types. However, we have discovered that it is an actual conspiracy to dispatch of us and any help that we can bring this town by one of your prime council members, which, let's face it, is slightly worrying for us, but should be even more worrying for the occupants of this town.
And he says, "A conspiracy? Well, there's plenty and more than enough of pirates and other ne'er-do-wells and criminals to go around in Saltmarsh, but I don't know about a conspiracy. What exactly who's behind this thing?"
Do you know Galen Primewater?
Obviously, everyone does. The wealthiest man in town.
I think his wealth was not just accumulated through standard bartership and piracy. I think that we need to go and find out exactly what is going on in this town, because he went very out of his way to administer poison
standard
to all
piracy,
of us.
Brian?
I mean,
the difference?
there's
How
nothing
does
wrong
someone
with
get in on
piracy.
this? How does someone get
Piracy
on
that-
standard piracy?
Standard piracy. We have a code. It's more like guidelines.
Be more like guidelines.
But he went very out of his way and set up poor broom closet Ned, to potentially either kill us or take the fall. Either way, I have a bone to pick with Galen Primewater, and he won't see us coming.
These are pretty serious charges, you know. Primewater's been involved with this town for quite some time. His family roots go back too. Where's your evidence for this? That broom closet type over there?
He's one of the pieces of evidence. He has also recruited a nefarious type, Sanballat. Are you aware of Sanballat?
No, I don't know that name.
He seems to be running the operations up in the old haunted house. It isn't haunted. However, there is more going on there than meets the eye. And Galen is top of the tree when it comes to people that should be made culpable for things going on in this town. And let's face it, I think we're all a little perturbed about being poisoned.
And he sort of he nods his head slowly, and he says, "I can't blame you for that. But Morthwyl," he looks at you, "you've been part of this. You've lived here a long time. Does this strike you as something Galen would be doing?"
Can't say I've had much dealing with the fella myself. He's not the sort that comes down the dockyards personal like. He'll send a guy with a letter, and that letter will say, "We need 500 chains by tomorrow," and you get it done.
And he nods. He says, "It's true, but I don't understand. He's already got more money than he knows what to do with, at least here in Saltmarsh. I don't understand why he'd try to make things change beyond that. Either way, you're going to have a hard time trying to dislodge him from anything. Much of the council ends up being part of his, well, not control exactly, but at least they'll listen to him. And the townsfolk sometimes are likely to do the same thing. Every so often he has one of these events where he gives things away. In fact, he's going to be doing one of them tomorrow, I believe, handing out these exotic flowers and fruits to people. Does that every so often. Wins him support when he needs it. And, well, not saying you're wrong, but that's quite a maneuver for him, it seems to me.
As we understand it, there are operations taking place in Saltmarsh that he does not want getting back to the council, and I would assume not wanting to get back to the townsfolk here as well. And maybe he sees us as a threat to that. Maybe he just wanted to get us out of his way. Either way, I think we are definitely going to get ourselves in his way now. But we need to recuperate a little bit before we get into that. And we need to investigate a little bit more before we get into that.
I believe Sanballat was supposed to make sure we didn't come back out of the so-called haunted house. However, from what he was saying, since he's been there, he's come across a few things of interest that may have him branching out on his own. He's looking for something up there, you see. Don't suppose in all your research you've ever come across any records or rumors or gossip about something beyond the usual alchemist treasure?
Well, enough of it to be able to tell that that house has got some meat on the bones for sure. For one thing, it was owned a long time past, as you know, by the artificer himself, but really not as much an artificer as he was an alchemist. Someone who was able to, if he wished, change things backwards and forwards again, move things with liquid and everything else. And it's said that all of this happened before. There was supposed to be a secret hoard of alchemical gold that could be found underneath it, and that eventually this would happen. It was an aged alchemist he was, and the house was deserted many years ago when he supposedly died. But no one ever found a body, and no one ever knew exactly what happened to him. Well, for a while, the house was empty. Then a couple of brave or stupid souls went wandering inside it. Something frightened them off. And since then, it's been fairly ordinary, I'd say. Until, well, not that long ago. It was, who was it? Canis, right? Who made his way through and, drunk, wandered into the place. And the next thing you know, he comes back with discussions of sounds and screams and all that, and the whole question is brought up again. I gather that's when they brought you in. It was a place that wouldn't be easy to trust, I can say that for sure. And he had a sinister reputation, that alchemist did.
Someone must have known more than they was letting on. You don't just hire some random people from a tavern to go investigate a drunk's ramblings about ghosts and vampire rats.
That depends on who hired you. Who was it exactly?
That was, hang on.
Tell me immediately, with all details.
Start
It
the
was
conversation
Scaramouche,
clock. Make a choice.
It was Scaran Wave Chaser.
And he sort of nods
Aye.
slowly and he's scared and wave chaser, eh?
Aye.
All right. Well, if it's true that he sent you, then I suppose you can assume that he sent you because they thought you were the ones who were, don't take it the wrong way, expendable. I imagine that he looked at you and thought you had enough talent you might find something, and if not, no skin off his nose. Who's gonna care, begging your pardon, of course, to lose a dwarf and an elf and a kenku and, of course, a genasi? You're all outsiders here from the point of view of many of them, though. You might have noticed some of that yourself. Even you, Morthwyl. You'd fall probably short of some of the ones that are around there. The traditionalists battled their way through some of the others, you know that. The loyalists, too. A lot of what we spend our time doing here is trying to battle themselves out. Traditionalists and the loyalists and all the others here. And a lot of them don't see you as being part of the typical mix. Like Hack and his crew.
I've been here longer than most of them put together.
Yeah, but you'll never be one of them. You know that as well as I do. I know the feeling. And he kind of gestures back to his slightly orc-shaped ears, and he says, some of them are friendly enough. And in truth, there are times when the town does embrace you. But especially when you're someone who's not one of them. And I don't even mean someone who's not human. Just someone who isn't seen as a Saltmarsh type. Well, they sort of put you into another category completely. Unless, that is, you can prove yourself worthy of them. Maybe I've buried so many of them by now, they've decided that I'm as much a part of the town as anything else. But for you, Morthwyl, I'd say they've got respect and care for what you do. I don't know whether they see you as one of them yet. And, of course, Silvo's barely been here a year, and for the outsiders, well, they're still outsiders. I don't like it. I've lived here all my life, but the truth is Saltmarsh is a suspicious place.
I suppose if they haven't seen me as one of their own after over 150 years, they're not likely to start anytime soon.
You might be surprised. Some of the people who lived in Saltmarsh, one of them in particular, there was a sea captain back in the day. Well, he lived here considerably longer because he was an elf, and it took him a couple of 100 years before they finally accepted him. Once all that was done, they eventually had several buildings that were basically made in his honor. You might get their attention and their respect yet, but they're stubborn and slow, not unlike the rocks. But eventually water erodes everything, and eventually their resistance will erode too. Just gotta be patient.
Words of wisdom, my friend.
And he nods and he says, "So, you found this operation in this sandbillet there, you say? You say, who are they smuggling to? What ship? And what people?"
We didn't have enough time to find details. We had a small case of poisoning that we also needed to deal with. And once we discovered Ned and the conspiracy against not just us, but seemingly the whole town, we decided to regroup. Obviously, we aren't going to let this lie, and we'll be finding out more details about this operation. But for now, we know that it exists.
We did find this documentation while we were searching the place. I pull out the things we found. So the book on Ayers, the evil god, the dictionary sheet, the tide book with the tide times jotted down there, and the sexy book.
Okay. So which
book.
of these do you hand over to him?
I'm going to hand him the tide book and the book on Ayers.
Okay.
You
So-
keep the sexy book for yourself.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, and also, I mean, not that one. That's my own book. But these books.
I'm still reading the articles.
I really like the letters to the editor. Okay. So you take a look at and hand over those two things. And Craig looks at the first one, which is the one with the tides in it. And he says, table of tides for sure. But this ain't just any table, you know. You saw that, right?
It looked very, very specific.
Aye.
Did we notice anything in particular about it? I don't think I looked at it that closely.
I didn't even have seen it before, so I'll try to look over Craig's shoulders and get
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I
you can see
think
it,
I
'cause he
grabbed
has the
it while I was
pages
in there
open.
with Silvo.
Yeah, I didn't see it either.
Yeah, so he has the pages open, and I would say both he and also you, Brian, and Waves, you would know about this a little bit as well, obviously, because of you have a sailor's history. But I would say both Waves and Brian would know a little bit about this. As Craig is looking at it, let me see. Trying to think of what. Let me have you have Brian and Waves, please, make a history check for me, please.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Brian
Okay.
is
Waves, something about this feels to you like you know something about ships. That there's something about I mean, you recognize it, of course, as a thing which reflects tides, but there's something odd about it, and you can't quite put your finger on what. But Brian can. And Brian, what you know is that this particular chart is not the way most sea charts work, is that they make it so that anyone picks up a chart and then anyone can use it, and it's generic, right? So it works for any ship. But this one, it seems, is targeted, from what you can tell, to a particular place and a particular area in which the tides are being listed. And from what you know, based on latitude and longitude calculations and whatever, the tide chart is keyed to directly outside the house that you just came from, specifically the water that is accessible from the caves. You may remember you were going through the caves and you were heading, and you knew that if you kept going in that direction, you would come to a place where the ocean was visible. That's basically where this chart is keyed to, is the water in that area, right outside the cave that you could access via the basement.
That's very localized. Interesting. I haven't seen that before.
You make something of this
Is
then,
that-
Craig says.
Is that all you say, Brian? Do you just say,
Uh,
you look at
I-
it and go, that's very localized?
I'm obviously I'm like following lines and chart. That's very localized. That's just this all points to, you know, when we were down in the caves when we met Sambalat and we heard to the south we could hear the ocean. This is mapped to exactly that area. It's very strange. It's very localized. I've not seen something like this in a while.
So is somebody monitoring the waves or the tides just outside of the house? That's what I'm getting from that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Targeted
that-
to exactly that area.
So Silvo kind of leans back in the pew very slightly, almost like he's just sort of like slouching in the pew. He's like, well, that could have something to do with this. And with a sleight of hand, he pulls out a sheet of folded paper. This is a note I found in Sambalat's private quarters that equates to how to signal something using a very specific lantern that may or may not be in my bag.
Ah, you did tell us about that. I have written down the instructions
I did.
somewhere. I
Morthwyl's
memorized them,
chuckling
obviously.
quietly to himself.
So it may be a ship that they are currently dealing with is in the shallows, deeps, however, whatever seafaring folk call the waters outside of a location or outside of a cliff, and they can signal that boat to come and collect their smuggling wares or drop off their smuggling wares. And like Silvo kind of spins this in his hand a few times, and then all of a sudden it's like gone.
That makes sense. The sheer cliffs coming up to, I'm assuming that we know the layout because we saw the pictures. It was a sheer cliff, wasn't it, up to the house?
Yep.
So we're assuming the caves are at the bottom of a sheer cliff, which would make it quite treacherous waters to negotiate for even the most experienced ship captain. That tracks. That makes sense.
There was another page, like this translation page.
The
gave two
IOS thing,
pages
which
to
we're going to
Craig.
get to. Yeah, the IOS thing, which I was going to get to in a second, but I wanted to make sure we were done with the tides thing first.
So that's interesting, right?
And so Craig kind of nods, and then he turns over and he opens the Ayers thing, and he says, old Ayers. Well, I wonder if this is just a standard worshipping of the bad guy, or if there's more going on here. Ayers, you know, has always been interested in taking out what was left of Kaeland. And if it were up to him, Saltmarsh would have been one of their principalities a while ago. I haven't heard anything from the old bastard for a while, but it wouldn't surprise me if Ayos was involved in some of these things. I mean, not directly, perhaps, but certainly from a distance. You can feel it yourself, can't you? There's something moving in the waters, you might say. And Ayos, of course, has lived long enough to take several attempts at trying to take over the lands of the free peoples. Wouldn't surprise me if he tried to do the same thing here. Maybe even got the sea princes on side. That would be a change for him. And he kind of looks at the book a little bit more and then shakes his head and he says, on the other hand, it could just be your standard cult. Maybe they smuggle and worship evil demigods on the side, I don't know. But yes, Ayaz himself is a god of evil, and anyone who's got his stuff within his possession is either fooling you or has got some vague interest. Either way, it suggests that these are not the nicest people you found.
If Galen is making noises in the direction of Ias, this troubles me greatly.
And he says, if it's Gelen, I still don't know. Doesn't feel right to me. But yes, I suppose if Gelen's involved, then yes, that'd be a big problem for Saltmarsh. And he closes the book and he hands it back over to you, Morthwyl, and he says, all right, so you've got a, what did you call it, localized tide chart. You got something which suggests that someone's at least interested in an evil demigod. That's not a good start, but it indicates there's some serious problems there, at least for you. At least for those who would face down these people. Anything else?
We've got a store cupboard Ned who was corroborating some of the story at least, but as much as we trust him.
Aye, exactly.
He had plenty of reason to lie, but I'm fairly certain he was telling the truth when he named Galen. It doesn't make sense that he would name him unnecessarily.
And Craig nods slowly and he says, well, then you're going to have to tell it to the council. But when you go, you'll need to make sure you've got all of your gravestones in a row, as they say. It's going to be necessary for you to be able to be ready. Gelen, as I said, is very respected in the council, one of the most powerful. And if you go before him and start throwing around wild accusations, not only will you have no effect on him, but you'll lose your own authority in the town. Make sure when you're ready to accuse him, you're ready to accuse him with something that'll stick.
I agree. We need something more tangible than sea charts and books. And the word of shady characters, should I say.
And he nods.
All right. I look at the others to see if they've got anything else they want to contribute to this.
We're just kind of leant so far back now, he's kind of turned sideways on the pew and he's almost laying down with like a hand behind his head. He's like, nope.
Can't think of anything else that's relevant right now.